Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth week of the Inspire series, where we discuss different aspects of picture books each week. And tonight we're talking about how illustrations bring different kinds of impact to picture books. Tonight we have Sarah and Karen, who are always with us. Michelle Worthington, unfortunately, can't be with us, but in Michelle's place, we have two brilliant people who are very accomplished authors, artists, and teachers. So we have Josh Langley from Perth in Western Australia. Josh is an award-winning author of several books. And we have Ramona, who is an author, illustrator, and also an arts teacher. So if we can start with you, Josh, can you just tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, okay. Well, today actually is the 7th anniversary of my first kids' picture book.
Wow.
So it's like, yay! So
Yeah.
7 years this book came out, and I'm an author and an illustrator as well. And so I've written 5 of these books. I'll just quickly hold them up in order. So it's okay to feel the way you do. That's the one that won the Australian Book Industry Award, Small Publishers Children's Book of the Year. You can
Wow. Cool.
you can tell I've said that many times. And then Magnificent Mistakes and Fantastic Failures came out, and then Being Wildly Kind came out after that, and then last year How to Be a Wonder Hunter came out. So I call it the Being You Is Enough series of books, and they're all sort of self-helpy kind of books. There's no storyline. It's just me talking to kids directly about what's really important, what I think they should know, and what's going to be really beneficial for their development. So they're funny. They've got poo jokes in them and stuff like that. You know, everyone kids love poo jokes. And yeah, right. So I've been writing for that, and so I've built basically a small little empire based around my children's books and my school incursions and my online programs that I've created and stuff like that. So I'm having a ball with it. So that's just me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's good to have fun with it, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Why do it if you can't have fun?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Josh. And Ramona, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Hi everyone, I'm a primary teacher, and since I've been in Australia, I've been an art teacher as well from kindy to year 10. I'm currently teaching teenagers art in a special kind of respite program, which is great because I get a really small group and I get to know the kids and I get to share my journey as an illustrator with them because it's the age group you can start talking about careers. I like to promote the fact that being an illustrator is actually a career. Because once upon a time, that wasn't an option. It wasn't an option when I was at school. I was the arty kid. And because I was very arty and I could draw, they put my skills into a computer in the careers class and hat maker came up. And I'm like, and that was it. That was my future.
Wow.
Which I didn't go into. So I really like to tell the teenagers I work with, you know, illustration's a career. This is me. I told them about my contract I got at the beginning of the year after many years of trying. So I teach them determination as well. And I'm talking about the contract. I'm talking about storyboards. So with the art teaching, I'm also covering illustration, which is really good. And especially as a new illustrator. So, and author, should I add. I run a writers group, so I'm channeling both avenues.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so Sarah, we might start with you, put you on the spot. Yeah. Illustrations in picture books. I guess illustrations for me as a publisher are really, really important. I like to look at the manuscript and think about, okay, who can do this justice in so many different ways. Are you like that as an author, or how do you work? How do you work the process?
Well, I've worked 2 different ways. So I've self-published a book and I've chose the illustrator myself, and then when I've published books through publishers, they have brought illustrators to me. So I have to say I have so much respect for illustrators because I'm not over exaggerating when I say that they do bring our stories to life. And sometimes an illustrator can bring illustrations to my story and it can change some of the context or some of the words. And I think that just shows how powerful illustrations are.
Yeah.
You know, they are illustrating to us the context of these words. And I've had really good relationships with illustrators. I think that's really, really important as a writer, that you allow your illustrator to bring their ideas. You know, no one wants to stifle each other's creativity. So I just find it so interesting when I have one vision sometimes, and that's more with self-published books, because obviously I have a little bit more leeway with it as opposed to, you know, going through a publisher. But when that illustrator brings their vision, you realize actually how your words, your story can be taken in different ways. And that gets you thinking about the readers as well, about how they will take meaning from your stories. So I have to say, illustrators impact me, first of all, as the writer. That's where the first impact comes, because a few times I've rethought about things when I've seen the illustrations. I think that's the first impact. And then obviously it goes out to the readers. But I'm just, yeah, I draw stick people, but in a very bad way. That's literally my limit, my limitations to art. The impact actually is there, I think, in the beginning when you're working with the author.
Yeah, and you touched on something there when you just said you said the word powerful, and it is powerful. They do create that powerful impact. Do you agree with that, Josh?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you can, you know, from an illustrator's point of view, I mean, I can't speak for, you know, just straight illustrators, but I've spoken to enough of them to get a sense of what they feel when they see just text on a page and they're told, okay, what's your interpretation of this? How can you bring this to life? And they're tasked with that role of making, it's almost the words three-dimensional, really, and make them lift out of the page. And that then takes just normal straight text into something that really fires that imagination. And that's something a lot of illustrators don't take lightly. They go, wow, this is a big responsibility here. And I know for speaking to a lot of them, when they send off their first illustrations to the publisher for an idea or something, they're nervous as hell. They go, oh, I hope it's all right. I hope they like it. Because one thing you want to sort of nail the idea and nail what the author's trying to get across, what the feeling is, what they're trying to evoke. Because I know that they're not trying to draw a picture that just represents what has been said on the page. They're trying to reinterpret it. They're trying to bring it out so it says more than just what the text is. So when they send it through, it's like, I really hope they get it, because I don't want to have to redraw it again. But but it's a privilege that they don't take lightly, and it does have so much powerful effect, and it will literally transform a book, having that right illustrations to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It does transform, doesn't it? Karen, what's your experience?
I've actually had a good little experience this week. From a marketing perspective, I think the illustrators do the heavy lifting, because if you want a book to be noticed, if the first thing you look at is the front cover and the title, and it's that illustration on the front, before anybody will even look at a word, they'll go for. And I'm embarking on a local book, and so that'll be self-publishing. I'm terrified, but I found an illustrator, and she's really good. I love her, and I said, "Oh, I'm so nervous because of the cost." And she goes, "Well, Karen, if you want, you get what you pay for, and if you want the book to be successful, you want quality." And there is a difference in someone who can draw and someone who can illustrate. An illustrator brings layers of meaning. They know how to use colour to reflect emotion. And the one thing I'm curious about is some illustrators, they think visually, because the girl that I've given my local story too said, I've already got so much imagery in my head for this. So they must think a lot like a movie.
Mm.
Whereas I think more like, I'm just so word orientated. I don't get pictures. I just get feeling and emotion because I write. But the illustrator, I think, often see it like a movie. And that came out with talking to her. But also Ramona, you might be able to clear this up for me. I've got the illustrator and she's just doing the images, but some illustrators also do the graphic design, and that's really important as well, where the page bleeds go, brightness and the depth of the colour and all of that. I don't know how they do it, but it's really, really important in a book. It's even important, the choice of text and the font. Did you actually do that for the book you're working on?
Well, I started off with, so I'm very visual. When I write a manuscript, editors have told me I write manuscripts like I'm texting someone. There's so few words. And that's because everything's in my head often. So you're right about the font. When I look at books, the font's a very big giveaway as to whether someone knew what they were doing or not, or whether they had a artistic team or artistic director, or just someone, whether you're a big publisher or a small publisher, just someone who's got an art eye. Now, I may be artistic, but I don't want to touch the fonts.
Okay.
I'm looking at courses online about how to draw your own fonts at the moment, because the more skill set I have, the more appealing I am to a publisher. I know, absolutely agree with you there, Karen. You know, if I can do all the bleeds, I've done enough courses now to know where the gutter is and all of that lot. But I'm not a graphic designer. And a lot of graphic designers have moved into picture book illustration because they've got that skill set, and I'm a little bit envious of that. But I will train myself, so I can do that. But you're right, the font's massive, and graphic designers come in. That's where their skill set is, and the layout, the composition, the front cover. And the front cover, like you said, what have you said, is the bee's knees. It's the first thing everybody sees.
Yeah, exactly. Josh, illustrator yourself, do you agree?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the advantages of, I think Ramona will agree with me, is that when you write your own book and illustrate, that it's so much easier. You don't have to send it off and wait for it to come back, and you got that anxiety of like, will it work? Will it not work? How do I tell them I don't like it? No, I just go, I don't like that. I'll redraw that or do something else or something else instead. So I can easily edit it myself and come up with the ideas. But what Ramona was saying about moving into the fonts and the layout and the design and all that, I'm guilty of that. I'm absolutely a control freak, and I shouldn't be. But I pick the fonts that I want to use. I work out the layout, because my books all stick to a formula. So it's the left-hand page has got the text, right-hand page has got the illustration, and that flows all the way through. So when people buy a Josh Langley kids book, they know what they're going to get. There's no surprises, but obviously the content and the topics are all different. But I know how I can then write that book. I know how I can illustrate it, and to me, it makes it all so much doable and a lot easier when I've got that in my head and I've got almost like a formula, that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
no, it's all very interesting. You talked about, and I think it was you, Ramona, movies in your head, or it might have been you, Karen. Is that how you illustrate? Is that, Ramona, if you want to go first, like, is you draw what you see? Like, I'm just fascinated with the process.
It's a bit like scenes. So you have to think like that. And I've had no movie experience, but I know I've listened to a lot of illustrators that say it's like film scenes. It's a bit like writing. Writing's it's like a script sometimes. You've got to know what's happening next, and there's got to be a hint in that page that I'm drawing that hints what's coming next, unless I want it to be a surprise. So it's a tricky thing to explain how you see things, but I actually personally think authors are very brave to hand their writing over to someone they'll have no communication with to draw their book. And you could have written about a kid or a character called Tommy, and you're thinking it's a child, and the illustrator goes and draws a bear, and that's out of your control. I mean, that for me is like, that's so scary.
Have you had that experience, Sarah? Like when you've handed over a manuscript?
Yeah, just as Ramona was speaking, I was thinking about all my kind of experiences, and I don't know whether I've just been really lucky or whether illustrators are kind of becoming more like this now. But I actually had quite a lot of interaction with my illustrators, even through the publishing houses. They were coming to me and they wanted to do mood boards of the main characters and their expressions, and you know, and I was thinking, wow, there's so much thought process that goes into this for you guys. And I was thinking, you know, I think Joshua said earlier about, you know, skill sets, you know, our skill sets are changing as well, aren't they? They're kind of, you know, as illustrators, you are having to do so much more now. You know, it's all very technical, and the graphics and the fonts. And I think, you know, authors as well, we're having to kind of up our skills a little bit as well, because we're doing a lot of self-promotion. You know, even if you're with a publishing house, you are out there now and we're giving talks and we're doing these visits. So I think, you know, we're both kind of up in our skill sets. And I think as illustrators, you know, you are getting more into the graphics and the design of the book. And I was just wondering whether you feel, either of you, that you feel like you are having to evolve to an area where you probably didn't think you'd have to when you first started out. Do you feel that your role as an illustrator is having, you know, gaining more areas that you're having to learn to keep up with everybody in the industry? Do you feel like it's evolving as an illustrator?
Oh, Ramona, do you want to go first with that one?
Oh, yeah, I can. Well, for example, I used to be old school drawing, but now I'm Procreate on the iPad. And you've got all these conversations now with the colors of CMYK and RGB. And I'm sorry if that doesn't make sense to you, but it's just two different color types, and it's to do with the printer and how, you know, what you're drawing on screen looks different once it's printed because of papers and all of that. I mean, all of that is terrifying as a newbie to be learning all of those things. And you're kind of hoping there'll be, you don't want to have your hand held because that's embarrassing, but you do want a little bit of help with the publishing house, you know, with those new things if you are a debut illustrator, for sure.
I can vouch for that, because over the evolution of writing 5 kids books, I've learnt the hard way. From the first book, where I just draw a picture on the computer, put it into Word, make it into a document, send it off to the publisher. Right. Then they send it off to the typesetter. And the typesetter just goes, what is going on here? This is a dog's breakfast. What are you doing, Josh? And so I've learned to think like a typesetter when I'm doing the initial illustrations and the initial layout and stuff like that. Because what I do, I think I do it differently to a lot of other people, is I write all the text first put it into a Word document, have 2 columns. One column on the left has got all the text. So one page is one little section is the text. And then next to it, I write down an idea I might have for what that illustration could be. And if I don't have an idea, I'll just leave it blank. And I'll write all the text first. And then I get the text approved, or get the publisher to go, yep, that's great. Really love the concept. I don't know where you're going with this, Josh. You might want to change that. And then they'll trust me to go and then illustrate it. And I'll go illustrate each page, and I'll go, well, what am I wanting to say? Even though the text is very direct, but the illustration, I want that to have something a little bit magic, a little bit mysterious, or something to evoke something within the child reading it. So it's not a direct, like, here's a story about a cat, here's a picture of a cat. No, I want that to be, what's the cat doing? Is the cat doing something stupid? Is the cat doing something really weird? Or is it standing on its head and it's got butterflies out of its ears? Whatever. And that's one of the things I actually find really fun about illustrating. You can make them really silly. I don't know about you, Ramona, but you can make people and animals and just do the silliest things, and it looks really quirky, and kids love it.
Yeah, I agree.
Kids do love it. Yeah, sorry, Ramona.
Yeah, I think
agreeing. Sorry.
No, you're right. From a writer's perspective, because the skills of the illustrator are going up, so are the writers, because when you write, you've got to always think, am I leaving room for an illustrator?
Yeah.
Is there space, and am I allowing that illustrator space to create magic as well? And too many words take away from the illustrations now too a lot. You find the word count is 500 or less here in Australia, but a lot are looking for around 400 or even less. Depending on the form of the pitch book, they can go over, but it's for a special project. But the emphasis is on the writer's words and the illustrator's images combining to make a whole new entity that then becomes its own unique creative creation. And that is the most beautiful thing about a picture book.
Yeah.
And they just come together to make magic. And when they work, they're timeless and they're full of wonder, and you just can't help but hug them. You can't put them down. You've got to read them, or you just love them.
Yeah.
And it can be an image, and it can be a word. And I've even, there are even double spreads now in a picture book where there are no words, and that's just for the illustrator. And it's to pow, and they've got free reign. And that's what really makes the whole story come alive and grow and just become totally magical.
Yeah,
And
it does.
I think that is the impact of illustrations. I think because I'm hearing more and more from my agents, if I've got a manuscript, or from publishers, give the illustrator space, give them space. And when I think back to some of the books that I read my daughters over the years, like Shirley Hughes, when I think back to like the 80s books that I would have had when I was younger, and then I'm reading, that to my 6-year-old, and there was so much text, and then the illustrations, that the pictures really did just kind of mimic the words, and that's what we had. And I love that kind of old school retro. However, it just, I can see how it's evolved and how it's changed, because I'm just hearing all the time from a writer's perspective, give the illustrator space. And my agent will literally come along and just, take out whole chunks of text and say, no, this is for the illustrator. So I think we can see the impact that illustrations have, because that's happening for a reason. And I know that when I have, I teach preschool, and I know when I sit down with the children with the picture books, and these are very, very early picture books, a really, really simple storyline, as you were saying, just the illustrations are what are making the story more. They're making it silly, they're making it funny, they're making that child. But when I look at the storyline, it's just that very simple storyline that I'm seeing again and again in younger picture books, but the illustrations are making it something completely different. There's only so many times we can tell the same story for a preschool child, to teach them to be kind, and to sort of find who they are. It's the illustrations that are changing it. So I definitely think the impact is huge from illustrations.
Can I add something to that? When I'm in my writers group and we're critiquing each other's work, they'll often, because I'm the illustrator in the group, or one of them, they'll often point out to ask the 2 illustrators in the group, so to think about the illustrations when we're critiquing their work, and not so much the words. So for example, I'll point out to one of my group members, page 19, 20, 21, 22, they're all doing the same thing. Go back, think about it, because if I was the illustrator, I've got 2 double page spreads of the same thing. So go back, what else could be happening in your writing? Just add something. So we've got another clue, because we do need clues in the writing. If your characters are just talking sometimes, then that doesn't give us any clues as to what context they're talking in sometimes. So yeah, that helps sometimes, having an illustrator read your manuscript.
Yeah, it's a tricky game, isn't it? It's and I'm in awe of those of you who are illustrators, and it's because you and writers too, because you have to kind of have that dance together, don't you?
You do,
to get it right, not just to get it right, but to say what needs to be said in picture books. Yeah.
And you
yeah.
have to do it thousands of times. Like behind me on the wall, that is my book that that's all the drawings. See all those white A4 pages?
Yep.
That's how I do it. So that's all the double page spreads. And I've laid them all out, and that's been sent this week. So I'd start old school, just sketching. And I'll have the bleed lines, I'll print them off and then just draw on the sheets. And then I'll take a photograph of it all and put it into my Procreate and then draw over it. So, but you're doing it like you're repeating it. I've done it 3 times. I've got 3 storyboards of the same story. So it's a lot of repetition, but it's no different to editing your manuscript. It's the same thing. You go through it again.
That's a good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how when the story really connects with an illustrator, I love how when in their free play, they can actually bring in imaginary characters that aren't in the words, or extra little things in the setting, or doesn't necessarily even have to be a character, but different, and even the weather play, or to do with the setting and things within the story, like the seasons, or you can show so much, or life cycles, or whatever. It comes down to the illustrator, a lot of that. And yeah, it's really, I love the surprise you get when you see, as a writer, you see your words transformed and you go, wow, I didn't even think that was possible. And wow, that's just made the story so much better. And that's what we want. We want the story to be the best it can.
Yes.
Yeah. And illustrators contribute so much to that. Josh, when you illustrate, do you bring in that element of surprise?
Oh, I love doing that. I love it. I mean, I surprise myself because I'll have just a straightforward line. Like I've got one here from How to Be a Wonder Hunter, and I want kids to start the act of remembering their dreams, because the idea of dreams are really important, and it's a whole thing about being human. So the text is really simple. I wonder what my dreams mean. Where do they come from? Really simple. But the illustration, I thought, I'm going to steal from Salvador Dali and just get some of the inspiration from blending 2 of his picture books, his paintings, and give them my own sort of Josh Langley illustration style. And then this little bed down here, that's from one of my other books. So the kids can go, oh, that's from the other book that he's got. Yeah. And so kids just go, wow, I didn't expect that. And then when parents read it, they go, that's familiar. Who's that? No, it's Salvador Dali. I'm like, oh, what's he doing in the picture book? So it's just having that fun, having that playfulness, and having that element of surprise. And it's also learning new techniques. I know, Ramona, you'd be the same, but I discover something new on the program. Like I just use a basic Corel paint, and I go, oh, there's a new pen I could use. I'll use that in the book. Or there's a new way I can cut a character out and then multiply them and make them fill up the whole page and things like that. And I find that exciting. And I think the energy of the illustrator being excited about putting that on page comes out on the page, and it gets the kids excited too.
I love
Josh,
that.
sorry. Josh, do you use storyboards like Ramona just showed us? But no? Your journey's different?
Yeah, I suppose it's because, as I said, I just write the text on one side, description of the illustration. And because mine don't follow a storyline as such, there's themes that flow through, but it's not a storyline. So they're not the same characters moving through. Like I could have, like my books run at 100 pages, which is a bit crazy. Right. So I've got 50 illustrations that I put in there, and each one of them has got to say something different, and has got, even though that sometimes I can have a theme. If I'm having a theme running across 3 or 4 pages, I'll carry the theme of that illustration across, but the characters are doing something different, or something weird's happening, or something like that. But yeah, so there's no storyboarding. And then when I get to the time of actually going, okay, I'm going to sit down and draw, I'll actually do a little sketch on a sketch pad, go to a cafe or something like that, and actually let the ideas mull around and go, okay, is the illustration going to be a direct representation of what I said, or is it going to be a metaphor? Is it going to be symbolic? What am I going to do here? How am I going to get that across? And then I just jump on the computer on Corel Painter, and I just do it there. I do a black outline first, and I go back and tidy that up, and then I throw in the color, and I don't worry about the color charts or anything, Ramona. I've got no experience with that. So, and I just save it, pop it in the manuscript, and bang, there it goes off to the publisher, and they go, Josh, that's really great. However, that illustration is really crap. Do you want to do another one?
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Yes, Karen.
If you hold up your book,
Yeah.
now a writer's words, you can often, people say to me they can tell my writing. It's my style, it's my personal signature.
Yeah.
If we were to look at all of your books, your illustrations are your uniquely reflection of you, and that your illustrations are your signature of you. So if I were to go onto Instagram and I was going to flick through and I saw yours or Ramona's work, it's completely distinct and it's your own brand.
Yes.
And it's a reflection of you. And what's good, I think, for illustrators now is social media. Because people can find you, and if they look through your posts, you can actually, they can go, oh, look at that, that's what I'm looking for exactly. Or if someone's going in to look at your book in a shop and they've already got your other books, and because yours, you can link in things and series, you're hooking in a whole readers that are going to follow you and get your books because of your signature layout and illustrations. They're bright, they're bubbly, they're you. You're bright, you're bubbly, you're imaginative and creative and out there, and your books are. And Ramona's you're thoughtful and you think about it and how you're going to get the message through. And from what I've seen, yours will be a reflection of you and your signature.
That's a really good point, Karen. And I'm just had the thought with you, Sarah, with your book, The Heavy Bag, that's been translated taken into so many different countries. Has the illustration themes changed a lot? Like, could I pick up one of your books in, say, France, and then another one in the UK, and just know that they are yours? Like,
yeah, the illustrations have stayed the same for most of the countries, but there is going to be a change for the one part of the Asian market. So a new team of illustrators have been brought in by the publisher to kind of replicate, but obviously, you know, in a different way. And I was sent through actually last week the proofs of their ideas of how the character, because the character's name changes as well, just so it's kind of culturally inclusive. And I was really interested actually, because I thought, wow, that must be such a huge task for an illustrator to, you know, there's a book that's out there and in quite a few different countries and it's kind of known, but they've got the task of changing the illustrations whilst still keeping it within the Heavy Bag, you know, family and what people recognize. So again, I'm just in awe of, you know, how illustrators and artists' minds work. So yes, it's changed for a couple of the different cultures that it's gone into, but so is the character and so has my writing, you know. So I think that was always going to happen. You know, there's a lot of cultural context that's had to change for, you know, maybe the Arabic version or the version in India. So there's a lot that's changed with the text and the characters, although the storyline has stayed the same. So I think ultimately the illustrations did have to change at some point, but it's still recognizable. I think they've still used the same color palette, so there's a lot of things that I can still see which definitely says, you know, this is the Heavy Bag, but I think that is you know, that's quite hard for an illustrator to have to come in and do a second edition almost of a first book. But I was going to ask both of you, is a lot of it self-taught now? Like you're talking about Procreate and all these different programs that you use. Is this self-taught now, or is this, if somebody wants to become an illustrator and they go to art school now, is the technical side using Procreate, is that now taught as standard, or is this something that, okay, Ramona, is this something that the artist has to learn themselves?
It's a medium you choose to use. So I've chosen to use it because I really like the control over it. Maybe, you know, there is a control freakness in a lot of illustrators. Those that work with watercolor must not be like that at all, because you can't control watercolor, and that's why I don't go anywhere near it. But yeah, so the medium you use is down to you. So even if you did a degree or anything like that, like I know in the UK they have some fantastic courses on children's illustration, and I always find it a bit of a shame this country doesn't have that kind of thing. I've looked for that myself. So a lot of it is self-taught, and it's about just exploring the medium you like best.
Okay.
I'm the same. I'm self-taught, and but I don't illustrate outside of my own book. So it's only when I actually write a book is when I open up the Corel Painter program and start to draw. So I'm not like other illustrators like yourself, Ramona, who do it all the time and you know, really invested in it, especially upskilling and learning all the new techniques and learning the ins and outs of the program. Like there's things about the program that I use I wouldn't have a clue how to use. I just stick to my basic bits that I know. Every now and then I may discover a new pen or something like that, or a new effect I can use. But yeah. I mean, yeah, I wish I illustrated more. You know, like just did doodles and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know why. Something to think about.
Josh, would you ever consider illustrating someone else's book?
No. The reason being is for what Karen said, is that when people see one of my illustrations, it's attached to me. My people go, oh, that's a Josh Langley book, that sort of thing. And I couldn't do another person's story justice. I wouldn't be like Ramona, being able to bring out someone else's story and then have an amazing illustration that just lifts and just amazes a child. I would just do a little stick figure with a funny looking dog in the corner and just go, there you go.
And another thing too that's really interesting is your cultural background reflects where you live, the colors you choose, the way you depict people. If you look at an Australian picture book, it's very different to an English picture book. And then you look at an American one and it's different again. And then European books, oh my God, they're just so poetic and beautiful, a lot of them. But it's very distinct. And Australians, I think our culture is really reflected in our picture books a lot. A lot.
I think so. From the outside looking in, I can definitely see the difference, I think. And because I've worked within Europe as well, I think the illustrations for children sometimes are very grown up, you know, they're for very young picture book ages, you know, but that's what they're used to. That's their culture. They're used to kind of having that culture around them. And when I look at Australian picture books, they seem really fun. And I know, you know, that's not what all the books are about, but I think definitely. And I think here in the UK, a lot of our illustrators obviously grown up with some very set illustrators in our country. And I think that's probably still taught now about their styles. And, you know, in the UK, we're not great at moving away from history in the past, and you know, it's all kind of there. And I think I see that a lot in UK illustrators' work as well. I can think, oh yeah, I remember that when I was growing up. I can remember that style.
It's really interesting when you think of Sean Tian. He's
amazing.
Australian Asian, but you can see his Australian culture, but his Asian culture and the way he thinks, and he's just a creative genius. And even how he just uses all those greys and blacks and things in cicada and the mood before you see a word, and the cicada's there on the front of the book on cicada. And I think that's the beauty of every country and how they produce their books, and how, even though you can say, oh, they're just a picture book, but there's so much more. So much more.
Not just a picture book. Take the word just out.
Yeah. They're a
Yeah.
representation of culture and the way people think, and even a reflection of the environment of the country. Like, we have big blue skies, we have loud, noisy birds. We're very outgoing, we're outdoorsy, beachy, and then we've got the desert and it comes out. And then when you look at a book from England, you can see the green and the tradition and and then you look at American books and you can see the African American influence and Indian American, and now we're getting our Aboriginal Indigenous books coming out, and that's another different reflection of our culture. Picture books carry a lot of weight in a society, I think. They do a great job.
Absolutely, they certainly do. And I know, like, when I go into bookshops, and just me personally, whether I'm in there looking as a teacher or looking as a publisher or looking as a grandmother, I just know when I pick up a picture book what's right and what isn't. And it's really hard to explain, and it's that magical element that the illustrator brings in, like you said, Karen, looking at the cover, and if I can't see or feel that magic, and it's probably more the feeling than anything, then I won't pick it up. And it's just really hard to explain. The magic's just not there. And
I think a good example of that would be Meg McKinley's book, How to Make a Bird. Have you guys seen that one? Came out last year or the year before?
It's in my shelf somewhere, but I've got books everywhere.
Yeah, and that was illustrated by Matt Otley, and it's almost like I don't want to say it's lost on kids, but because adults read this book and they just get so taken away with this amazing illustration, just such a simple story that Meg's put in. And that's the ability of the writer, is, as we were saying before, to pare back the words, pare it back, keep culling, allow the illustrator that space. And then that book, there is a couple of double-page spreads in there that you literally are looking right across the whole, and the detail and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. But that's one of the books there, Jennifer, you see on the shelf and you pick it up and go, I want this book. I want this book in my life,
Exactly. Yeah.
And from a writer's point of view, if I were to try to tell an illustrator what to do, first of all, I don't have the way of looking at the words an illustrator would, but I'm only looking at the story one way.
And
so if I'm trying to tell someone else to do it my way, I'm narrowing that story down and making it shit. Because I want it to pop and have all that extra. You narrow your thinking and you narrow your story, you're not giving it room to breathe.
Exactly. And that's where trust of the illustrator comes in.
Yes, absolutely. Do you agree, Sarah? Do you think like, if you were to give advice to an illustrator?
I'm really conscious of that. I think the more illustrators that I work with or have worked with, I'm really conscious. Actually, I understand the process a lot more now. Like you say, Josh, when you first start out, you just kind of go for it, and you're not really aware of how the whole industry works and how all the different relationships and all the different kinks in the chain work. So first of all, I probably would have been very much at the beginning, okay, so this is the character, this is how I want this, and this is the scene, blah, blah, blah. And then you realize actually that that's not at all how that works if you're working with an illustrator. And now I'm very much the other way, where I just want to hear their thoughts. I want to see their vision. I want to see, how they interpret my words. So I think as writers as well, the more we get the opportunity to work with illustrators, the more we get to understand. And I think it just makes, the whole market better for everybody. And I'm the same as you. Quite often, if I go into a bookstore to find a book for my 6-year-old, it's because I'm really taken by this book's illustrations. And I think, well, you know, I read to her every night, so I really want to be looking at a book that I'm visually really enjoying. So quite often it's just, you know, I'm choosing these books, and I'm and I think that's really interesting as well to understand the market, is that, you know, as an illustrator and a writer, it is it's the adults, it's the grown-ups who buy the books, it's the adults who choose them. So
gatekeepers.
you've got that as well when you're illustrating. You know, you've got to think, and obviously you do, that it is adults who are primarily choosing these books for the children. So that's probably weighing in on your decisions as well sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've loved every minute of it. Any final parting words, Ramona and Josh, as illustrators? Is there any final parting words you can share with authors out there?
Yes, if for one of the best things for me to develop, one of these the biggest challenges for people who want to be trade published is building a portfolio. It's really quite scary, and there's only just starting to be a bit of help for illustrators out there about how to do it. And it's often illustrators that are instigating that, because there's not, like they have in the UK, like courses you can go to and turn up for. So one of the things that helped me is, before I had a portfolio, is I did Instagram challenges, and they were fantastic because they built my skill up. They gave me a theme to draw to. And then if I really was being clever, I would choose one character to do all of those themes. So I'm doing that there: cooking, skipping, having a bath, reading a book, you know, that repetitive skill set you need for that one character. And then that's the kind of, once you've done that, you've built up quite a body of work, you then can start having a portfolio to start showing editors for feedback.
Yeah, I would add, do that, keep practicing. And that's the thing, is that people sometimes, they look at a picture book and go, I can't draw like that, I'm never going to be like that. You know what? That illustrator practiced and practiced and practiced and got better and got better. And that's where I think people who are just starting out, you just keep practicing. I have a motto: practice makes progress.
Yes.
And that is something that kids are picking up and learning, and they running with it. And you don't have to be amazing to start off with. Just keep going, build up that portfolio, share your work, do all that sort of stuff, and just keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. Important. That's just so important. And I think that's important for authors too, Sarah and Karen. Just practice your art, practice your craft. And it's not about it being perfect. It's about making those little steps of progress. And, you know, and then you do create magic. And it's that magic that creates impact with the books and what we purchase as adults to read and share with our little ones. So thank you, everyone, for such a wonderful conversation tonight. Thank you, Sarah, all the way from the UK. Karen, as always, and our two special guests, Josh and Ramona. Thank you so much for chatting with us tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully we will get to chat again soon. So
thank you for having me,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.